1545 so far had gone very well for Otomo Yoshiaki, the man the Western traders called King of Bungo, a title made close to reality by the fall of the Ki clan. His rapidly assembled army, proudly fronted by rows of the Portuguese matchlock firearms he had paid so controversial a price for, had won 3 major victories and doubled its master's territory in a matter of months. But even as the campaigning season ended, the ambitious Yoshiaki had his men trudging north, planning to lay a killing blow to an old enemy, be they shielded by the deepening snow of winter or not.
"It is as we feared, my lord."
"As you feared. Just tell me the numbers."
1,000, 1 to 200 of which are samurai.
They can all be samurai. That is the virtue of shot. It doesn't matter one bit who they are.
Lord, you must have studied the maps.
I have studied the maps, and I have formulated my strategy already, so there will be no need for your input.
Of course, my lord. We all trust in your judgment.
Then break camp quickly.
We are retreating, lord.
We are simply moving its location. Tonight we sleep atop that mountain. No other place will do.
My lord, are you sure we can take the fortress in a single day?
Yes. Let's call it the Lord's will, shall we? Summon the officers. Hello and welcome back to Barbarian Masters. We're attacking Kokura Castle, home of the Sugi clan, and our first move is to send 2 units of Ashigaru around to the south side of the castle. They're going to be looking at a very difficult potential attack here, super steep cliffs and lots of walls of course, but they don't need to make an attack. All they need to do is be there. They're putting pressure on the enemy and forcing them to deploy units to basically keep watch over them, and they happen to deploy all of their archers on that side of the castle, which means the rest of our army is now going to be able to move unharassed around to the east side of the castle, where attacks look much easier. Before we make any form of attack though, we are going to try and weaken the enemy using our matchlocks. This is just about all they may be good for in this battle. If we can snipe enemies off the walls, that will make an attack easier. However, their exact positioning made it pretty much impossible to hit with direct fire. We could possibly hit them with arrows raining down from the sky, but in this case, a lot of this enemy unit here that I'm firing at is standing in the gatehouse, so our archers actually fire at the gatehouse, thinking that's kind of the center of mass of the unit, and it basically wasn't doing anything, so we just had to fast forward a little bit and try and get this attack going. First, I sent men to burn the gatehouse, both in the hope of gaining a point of entry and in the hope of damaging this unit, and it does work. If you destroy a building while a unit standing in it or near it, it just kills anyone basically to represent it collapsing, even though it actually doesn't in the game, so you can still walk through it. So that's damaged that first unit, that's great, and means our archers will have an easier time firing at it, and we're not getting any reaction from inside the castle. It's the ones on the inside that I'm really worried about, because up here they have lots of katanas and various samurai units which we don't really have any counter for right now. So an attack gets started. After weakening the Ashigaru unit on the outer part of the castle, I thought we'll just capture this outer defensive area and then see what the enemy do. So this first unit is basically going to be fighting men of about the same caliber on our side, but we just have more of them. And the question was, would the enemy charge some of their men out to try and defend the outer layer of the castle? And the answer to that question was no. As we just saw, they are going to allow this one unit to just fight on its own, and as a result that unit will lose to our superior numbers. It actually came back, it routed into the castle and then came back out, and I thought this time they might bring some more of their comrades with them, but again they didn't seem to be very convincing. They just went out to fight with us, an impossible fight which they lost immediately, and a few men will now try and escape back inside. No reaction at all from the enemy, so we've captured part of the castle and we'll start working on capturing the next part. I need to destroy the next gatehouse to do that, so I'm just throwing all those flaming torches up, and you can see it actually kind of melts the snow in a very sudden effect, but one that makes sense given what's going on here. The last couple of survivors from that Ashigaru unit are still basically running about in the gatehouse, unsure whether they should continue to follow their orders to stop us from capturing the outer part of the defences. They seem to try and close the gate, then the gatehouse collapses, tragically killing them both. So perhaps these troops were the most dedicated of the Sugi. They put in a lot of effort to try and stop us, even though it was quite hopeless, and the rest of their army still doing absolutely nothing. And that's actually going to make it a little bit difficult for us, because we want the enemy to split their forces up and try and defend the outer parts of the castle, while also committing some forces to stay in the middle, just because that will make life a little bit easier. So my next tactic was to send men up the ramp to basically goad the enemy into following them back down, in the hope we could get some of the enemy to come out and play with us.
What's it like to see your husbands killed, huh? Nice view from up here. Too cold for us though. Back, lads, go back now. Remember last night in town? Plenty of warmth to go around, wasn't it, you know? Bet these Sugi haven't felt that in a while, cooped up in here. Shame we had to have it all for ourselves. Come on then, no use hanging around here. No offence, mates, but we don't like a woman in armour. Just wait right here for us, and don't catch a cold now.
The plan was eventually a success. A unit followed my retreating Ashigaru outside of the castle, and then came under fire from our matchlocks and bows, which were hidden in the forest. They, upon seeing this, just charged forwards and came to attack our Ashigaru yet again. Probably the wrong move. They can theoretically win the melee here, but they'll be under fire the whole time, and they are going to draw themselves into a dangerous situation. There's the Ashigaru captain fighting on the front lines, eager to cut down some Sugi dogs, no doubt. He looks like he's in a bit of trouble. He's totally surrounded. Matchlock fire thins them out for him, but then an arrow seems to hit him out of nowhere. I didn't see any other arrows coming in there, so no idea who fired that particular shot, but it wasn't the best of ones. Anyway, that unit is now kind of split up. You can see some of them seem a little bit anxious about taking part in this fight and stay back near the ramp. However, we can still kind of surround them and try and get this to count as a flank attack, basically, by attacking with some more Ashigaru. Again, a unit that's inferior, but with all our numbers in the area, the enemy's morale isn't going to be too good. Plus, they've already taken losses from all that ranged fire. So we are going to defeat them, and a few other units actually looked like they might be coming outside, but just came down to stand in the outer layer of defences instead, including the samurai, a nice priority target. We can't defeat them in melee, basically, so we need to do some form of trickery to get them to face our matchlocks. That's our only hope. So that little fight with those Katana Ashigaru is going to be a victory, even though we took some actually decent losses on our own melee infantry to achieve that. A little bit later, I basically did the same trick on those samurai to try and draw them outside of the castle as well, and it does work, so that's going to be a very nice opportunity for us to basically shoot them and try and use the fact that our matchlocks will ignore their armour, unlike our archers, which probably aren't doing much damage to them at all. So to achieve this, we are going to have to draw them into a melee, and that's not exactly what we want, but hopefully we can thin them out sufficiently that it won't be too dangerous, because in the Master of Strategy mod in particular, the difference between samurai and Ashigaru is very much exaggerated. So these samurai will just annihilate our Ashigaru in melee, so I'm deploying our troops in to hold them in place, but we're going to lose men very rapidly in this fight. And the main problem this will give us is that we don't actually have many melee troops. I only have 3 or 4 units available to fight, especially because some of our troops are, as we saw earlier, hanging around on the southern part of the map, just distracting the enemy's archers. So I didn't really want to take enormous losses here. I'm going to try something to make it a little bit easier. I'm pulling our first unit back to draw the samurai down the hill towards us. The first thing that does is open up a tiny bit of line of fire for our matchlocks to attack them, but it also makes a nice easy surround for this second unit of elite Ashigaru, ready to get a nice downhill charge into the back of the samurai. Now, although the samurai are very good melee combatants, they aren't unbreakable. And being completely surrounded like this and hit by a downhill charge, I'm already probably scared of the matchlock fire they're hearing coming out of the woods. That's going to be enough to break this unit, so we will be able to destroy them again, despite decent casualties and probably a decent amount of friendly fire as well from those matchlocks. Yoshiaki being super ruthless in his attempts to take out those powerful samurai. Now, long story short, we managed to do the same thing, the same tactic to another unit of Katana Ashigaru, drawing them out of the castle. I'm pretty much out of arrows. I'm just saving the last few for our attack, so I didn't do much damage to them as they came out. Matchlocks managed to get a couple of volleys, and once the melees joined, that's not going to be pretty for our Ashigaru troops. However, it's easy to defeat these guys out here because their morale's so low. They're standing there facing an entire army, so they turn around pretty rapidly, and we'll just chase them, doing as much damage as possible. We will stop routing once they get back inside, but I decided to send the entire army to just push this really hard, and we managed to rout them again inside the castle and start hacking them to pieces as they went up these stairs, with Yoshiaki basically trying to block the way of the enemy's main bulk of troops and hacking himself right into their ranks. I'm sure he's enjoying this. So we're going to do a decent amount of damage to the enemy here, of course. However, once they retreat inside the gatehouse and get into the final part of the castle, they'll be in fight to the death mode. You can't rout once you're actually inside this last section, so that's going to turn that fight into a bit of a stalemate, because we actually need to defeat those troops in melee, and they are better than us. Meanwhile, Yoshiaki just ignoring that and charging right through to try and face the enemy's archers, who were finally coming over to pay some attention to us. So he charged forward to get them into melee with us, but that isn't necessarily going to be an automatic win for that melee. He's going to have to get out of there when he realizes they're not just going to break, and he'll be stuck there fighting actually pretty near some enemy samurai as well, so worth getting out of the way. But as he goes back down, he's going to encounter those fighting to the death troops. He's going to force his way right through them basically, and find that Kobayakawa, our second general, is having the same problem. He was trying to chase them from routing but got stuck once they started fighting to the death, and basically the rest of their army is going to come into this gatehouse now and all fight to the death. They've got loads of samurai, and they've killed at this point pretty much all of our melee infantry. We're down to the last few Yari Ashigaru, so on my side I had to send the matchlocks and the archers in to fight in this melee to try and grind through the last of these men who were just not going to leave on their own. However, there was one other option.
Kobayakawa, my lord, we've lost enough. Climb the wall and clear that courtyard. How many men should I take? Take your Hatamoto. The men won't make it. Go now. Yes, my lord. Hatamoto, with me! If what we're doing isn't right, may the spirits grant me rest before this sword is sheathed. Attack them! Lord, they are not breaking. Let me go and prepare the matchlock troops. We've plenty of powder left. You think they will fall for another feint? I would say it is worth trying, my lord. You aren't thinking this through. Do you know why we attacked today? I won't presume anything, my lord. There is not a single grain of rice in our baggage train, and precious little money. It was necessary to relieve the burden on both. We can capture their supplies even with my strategy, lord. You don't understand at all. Consider this, then, you light-hearted girl. Lord Kobayakawa is inside this castle. If we let up for 1 second, they'll swallow him. The finest commander in this army, and a loyal man who doesn't come to me with idiot suggestions in the midst of a battle planned before the hair on his lip first sprouted. I'm so sorry, my lord. I will join the attack. I will bring you more heads than any to beg for your pardon. Make sure you do. You'll find me inside. Hatamoto, don't worry. I haven't forgotten about our slice of the glory. Up we go.
So yes, indeed, both our generals with their Hatamoto guards are now hacking through the enemy's support troops inside the castle. We're going to have to kill absolutely all of them before these guys will consider the fight over. And once we've done that, we will be able to use them to support our melee troops pushing through in the gatehouse down there by rear-attacking the guys currently defending. So that fight is won, as you might expect. Hatamoto far outclassing the enemy's Ashigaru archers, and now we can repurpose those troops. I've also attacked with the group that was providing distractionary cover from the south, so I've captured some towers and gatehouses as a result of that, and they actually went on to capture the Tendou. However, we didn't need to do so. We did actually kill the enemy down to the very last man in an intense fight in this gatehouse just as the Tendou was captured, with all of those Hatamoto guards providing ample support, and Yoshiaki and Chikaharu were right at the front in that fight as well, very eager to take part in the battle. It's a close victory in the end. We did take some decent losses, especially on the melee troops. As I said, we lost really most of our melee force, and we only had 3 units there, Yari Ashigaru, so that's pretty substantial. It makes our army quite ineffectual now, because it's now basically all ranged units. So we'll have to refit the army, but we'll have plenty of time to do that. We'll occupy Buzen, that's going to wipe out the Sugi clan, and it comes with some samurai and siege weapon recruiting facilities, which are both very interesting. We may make use of them. We'll repair up that castle, and now we're just going to be waiting out the rest of winter. We want to replenish our army, and we're going to need to bring the Christian ministers over to start converting the population to Christianity in order to get public order stable. So now into the spring, I was scouting to the west to see what was happening with another enemy we've had since the beginning of the campaign, one of our historic enemies, the Shoni clan. They're on the other side from us of the Tachibana clan, so I wanted to check their diplomacy. We're actually supposed to be allied to them, but that doesn't really mean anything. You can see here on the diplomacy map, everybody hates us, ally or not. We can't really afford to trust anyone right now, and another problem with the fact that everyone hates us, which is because of Christianity, as you might guess, is that it's pretty hard to get trade deals. Our trade income potential is pretty high because we have lots of trade goods, but no one wants to trade with us, basically, even though it would benefit them as well. And even our own ally, the Tachibana, really have to think about the prospect of trading with us. They don't really like us, even though we do have some military access deals, which will come in extremely useful right now, since we're at war with the Shoni and we have to go through Tachibana's land. And you can see I actually agreed to pay for trade with them, because I think it's that important to try and get a decent relationship with at least some of our neighbours, especially considering that they have a full army right there which could easily attack us, and we're just going to be walking right past them to try and get into the Shoni lands. We can see the Shoni are kind of spread out, so there may be an opportunity to steal a castle or two here, while their force is presumably somewhere else, perhaps at war with another clan on another front. And the other thing we'll need to focus on is spreading Christianity, as already mentioned, and we're going to be using our Christian ministers to try and help out with that. And their presence also just makes the people happy in general, because they're such nice people, and that's going to help us with taxation also. Now we get a message saying an ally is being attacked. It's actually our vassal, the Kamachi, just down to the south of the Shoni lands there, and they're being attacked by Kikuchi, which is a small clan to their south. So it's a battle we can't necessarily take part in, because it's just kind of separated from where we are. And the problem I noticed right away is that our vassal has nothing in their town, because their whole force is up here in the Shoni lands. Presumably they're at war with them, so maybe that's what the Shoni have been busy doing. So we may be about to lose our vassal there, but I was distracted by this extremely suspicious situation. You can see the Tachibana have taken their whole army and attempted to hide it near Buzen, although we discovered they were doing it. They're allowed to do this according to our treaties because we had military access, although if you look at the borders on the floor there, you can see they've actually broken their alliance to us, although I didn't realize it at this point. I didn't actually notice that myself while playing. So our relations seem to have deteriorated. They've moved a stack into our territory. That's definitely something to be worried about. And you see I went here to check the diplomacy, like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Saw here that they weren't actually allied to us anymore, although the military access deal was still going, so they are technically still allowed to put giant stacks next to our castles if they want. But you have to consider what else they could possibly be doing if they're just going and sitting next to our castle. There's only really one thing they can have in mind there. Perhaps they're trying to defend me from a potential invader. Maybe that's their excuse. Anyway, we're going to ignore that, and Yoshiaki's just going to plow right on with his original plan of trying to steal this Shoni castle. I'm going to go right into the castle assault to get it over quickly, so let's take a look. Your sailors are quite enterprising and your merchants fair. That is the last of the praise you deserve. The first criticism I would offer is that your merchants are also loose-tongued and gossiping. I have discovered everything, the full extent of your deal with the barbarians. That you let them deceive the common people would be crime enough. That you let them deceive educated and noble men is worse tenfold. Yet worse even still is your vile trade in prisoners. I know the people of Buzen. There are not so many criminals there that you can fill barbarian ships with ransomed men. I want to believe you are doing no wrong, but sadly I do not. In the name of justice, I will take my army to watch over your people. Treat them with dignity, and I will leave my bow undrawn. So let's take this castle. We start off by surrounding it with various units and observing what the enemy have inside and how they've deployed their units to come up with a plan. They've got some archers facing south. That's where our main force is deployed. So we're just going to stand still for now and keep their attention. They've got more archers who will be moving on to the western side of the fort. And on the eastern side things are pretty clear. From the east I'm going to be moving up archers of my own to shoot in and try and damage enemy melee units. And on the west side, where they had a few archers standing in the gatehouse, we'll just about see in a moment, I decided to start firing at them, and this kind of works because matchlocks in the Master of Strategy mod have a slightly higher range than bows, meaning we can just stand outside of the range of their returning fire and shoot at them for free. Obviously at the maximum range, and since the enemy are in cover, these matchlocks are going to be doing pretty much nothing, but we have lots of time. We're not in any particular rush, so we can just fire most of our ammunition at these guys, and slowly but surely we're chipping away at them. Plus, because they're under matchlock fire, the enemy aren't going to be happy, making it easier for us to rout them, which will cause them to get off the wall so we can advance in a little bit more safety. So there we go, gradually clearing out the gatehouse with this tactic. And perhaps the most important part is that we got this for free, essentially. We just had to use some ammo, and the matchlocks may not be very useful once we're inside the forts, so effectively that's just making life easier. And we're also going to be attacking here on the eastern side, of course, where I've burnt down the gate, and our archers have had a pretty easy time just shooting up a few Ashigaru there, which I didn't bother to show, making life easier for us once we're inside at least. Now it's time to start the assault. Basically we move up some of our melee units, not bothering to attack the southern part of the fort at all, because that is the hardest approach, moving everyone to attack from the west and east. We've burnt out all the gatehouses to give us lots of options. The enemy did shift some of their surviving archers to start shooting at our spearmen as they prepared to climb, so that's a bit dangerous, but not much we can do about that. The enemy do have the defender's advantage here, so we have to accept that at some point and just try and get in and make sure they can't use it as much as they potentially could. Once we're in, a melee is going to start, and this is going to be pretty bad for both sides, just a grind really. Here we can see one of our flag bearers going absolutely wild on the enemy, just slapping them about the face with the flag. They are not happy about this whatsoever, and someone manages to put an end to his rampage. A tragedy to be sure. However, we are going to try and minimize the amount of losses we take in these fights by going for the capture point. That's always a good idea in these settlement battles. So the real goal of all these attacks and all these different points is to split the enemy up and try and divert their attention away from the Tenshu so we can take it and basically defeat all these units for free. And sometimes that means taking fights that you can't win, which many of those melees could be. We do kill their general somewhere in the fight, actually the heir to the Shoni clan, so that's nice. And there's Kobayakawa once again pulling his wall climbing antics, just sending his Hatamoto in to rear attack units that our guys are struggling with as they come through the gates, basically to try and take some pressure off. Not that we really need to. You can see the timer in the top left is ticking down. I brought in all of the archers and matchlocks where I could to just go and stand on the capture point because they couldn't do much else once the close and chaotic melees had got started. So that captures the settlement and ends the battle prematurely as those fights just continued on in a decisive victory. Very nice. So we stolen a castle from the Shoni there. We do know they have a main force nearby, so they may of course simply come and take it back, but for now this is a pretty positive result. You can see the ratio was really good as well, especially for a settlement attack, so we're in pretty good condition after that, and we can even think about going on to just take another Shoni settlement because there's another one to the south, and if our vassal doesn't take it then we potentially can. First though, we need to repair things up and destroy this shrine. We're under obligation because of our deal with the Christians to get rid of those shrines and preferably replace them with churches.
That's all of you?
Yes, Lord Otomo.
And you are their leader, I presume?
In a sense, I will speak for us all, Lord.
You needn't. The rest of you, go down to the bridge. One of my retainers, Lord Uno, is waiting to take you to Bungo.
To Bungo, Lord? Are we to tackle the barbarian stories?
No. In fact, you'd better get used to them. But not you specifically, Abbot. You're staying here. Go on, everyone. Get going. I should go with them, my lord. You should listen to the man with the matchlock. You're familiar with this black powder? Yes. I have 5 sacks of it here, see? Now I'm going to return to the town. If I do not hear this shrine being torn to splinters before I reach the first post station, I will return with another sack, empty and hungry for your head.
As feared, the Kikuchi appear and take out our vassal there, so that's a potential new threat for us since we are at war with them because we supported our vassal in that conflict. Wako pirates also appear and they blockade our main port, and that's going to have a devastating impact on our finances because we are very much based on trade, a lot of foreign trade as well. So they've got a couple of ships. We've got one ship on the inside that I just constructed. Luckily you can build ships while under naval blockade, so I can slowly increase our naval strength to perhaps break out, but of course we're losing money, so we don't necessarily have the resources to do that. I can gather up ships from other places, bring this Boka boy back from scouting for example, so we may be able to do something about it, but I didn't have to because we saw there the Mori with their big navy came over and just destroyed the pirates, so that is fantastic news. Big thank you to the Mori for doing that for us. So now with our finances back on track, we can return to thinking about another military move. I wanted to take South Chikuzen. We're sitting in the castle at North Chikuzen, so we need to take both castles to have this region properly secured up. However, the public order locally is so bad that I didn't really want to move out. I moved my minister over to help out with that. We need to convert more people to Christianity, and the army needs to sit in the settlement in order to keep people under control for now. So I just left things as they were for a bit. However, the Shoni suddenly appear with a small army to attack us, and I was kind of surprised by this, mainly actually because I expected more to come and attack me. Well, I saw before the Shoni had a full stack of troops, but they've brought a smaller army than expected, and the balance bar is actually surprisingly big for them. I expected this engagement to look like it would be a very easy win for us. They have though brought all of their highest ranking officers. It seems the whole of the clan's central leadership is going to take part in this assault, and they are better as leaders than our commanders, so that's something, but I think this is going to be a very nice opportunity to deal a blow to our enemies in fact. The men of the Otomo clan had for several generations been reliably informed who their enemies were. The Uichi, the Sugi, the Shoni, their rivals for reasons that no longer mattered beneath the race for dominance. It was the thought of crushing these rivals, as his ancestors had failed to do, that made Yoshiaki into who he was, and had made him gamble for power on his interactions with the Europeans. So many thought him a fool or worse. None thought less of him than Tachibana Dosetsu, who came to the edge of war over Yoshiaki's purging of supposed dissidents. It seemed Yoshiaki had agreed to cease the practice in the face of Dosetsu's threats, and war was averted. In truth, naval blockades by pirates and a shift of focus to Chikuzen had rendered Buzen temporarily unprofitable, creating an illusion of reason about the strange Christian daimyo. And reasonable or not, none could deny that whatever he was doing, it was working. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and special thanks to the OfficiallyDevin patrons for making this episode happen. We'll start hostilities with the Uichi clan at sea, and we'll move out to attack the Kikuchi and try to avenge our vassal in the next episode of Barbarian Masters.